You're listening to the One-on-One Football Podcast, the number one podcast for Aussie rules training, coaching, and development tips.
Welcome to the One-on-One Football Podcast. My name is Andrew Rains. I'm your host of the show. Joining me today, our co-host, Harry Simington. Welcome, Harry.
Thanks, Rainsy. Good to be here, mate. We're doing episode 0 today, which is bit of a different one. More so just an intro into what the show's going to be about, and who can sort of benefit from the episodes and the content that we're going to provide.
Yeah, quite a bit of, might be a bit of an uncommon thing with podcasts. I've been seeing a few podcasts these days and doing a bit of more of an intro around sort of episode 0, so no number, but as you said, a bit of an introduction to sort of what we're about, what our listeners can expect to hear throughout the episodes. So, mate, I might just kick off with you. What is our format, and how can our listeners and what can they be excited for our speakers and our topics that's going to be covered in our podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. We're sort of, I guess we saw a bit of a gap in footy content out there. There's a lot about I guess news and the off-field happenings, but and like the drama around football. But we really wanted to, I guess, provide some footy education and really cover some topics as in depth as we can. So what we're planning to do. So obviously the two of us are the co-hosts.
Bit of the young and the old there, mate. So we're sort of looking forward to that. So a bit of an age gap, but I think as you're about to sort of explain, I think it's going to time pretty well.
Yeah, it should be pretty good. Obviously, we're footballers and coaches, so bear with us if our podcasting skills aren't as good as our football. But yeah, so obviously we're gonna interview someone every week. I'm gonna bring on a new guest, and the guest can be anyone in the football world. Obviously, we've got quite a network of football experts with the platform, particularly coaches and ex-players. But we're pretty passionate to bring on, anyone that has an impact in football and anyone that our listeners can learn something off. So yeah, Rainsy, we want to cover 2 topics per episode. Did you want to just run through what the 2 topics are and the format of that?
Yeah, so we're sort of looking around our topics and discussing with our special guests. There's going to be some really big names, some names that maybe our listeners may have not heard before, but I'm sure you will when you obviously listen to the entirety of episodes. But some on-field topics in terms of, it might be a kicking episode where we really delve into the topic of kicking, which is quite a subjective topic on the basics of kicking. Could be something like that. Could be team defence. Could be tackling. Could be contested marking, ruck work, run and carry. Anything to do with the modern game or basic fundamentals with our game in the skill breakdown. So an on-field point of view, and an off-field topic could be anything around sort of leadership, culture. We've got some former AFL captains that we're going to introduce on the show. It could be, the female landscape and how that's, really evolved, the AFLW and getting some AFLW current players on and listening to some of those insights on how the game's really evolved over the last couple of years and where it's heading. So some really good mix of on-field stuff and some off-field stuff, and we'll tie in those 2 topics with the one guest and make it more of a conversational piece and open up the conversation and really delve in. And that's the idea around this podcast, to really delve into and fine tune our topic and our presenters will obviously talk about that and they're experts in their field. So hopefully a lot of our listeners will get a fair bit out of it. I think there's a lot of podcasts out there, as you said before, a bit of a gap in what we saw in the podcast market and what we're about in one-on-one football is really being specific and individually tailored to a certain skill or topic or subject in the game. And I think it's going to be great. It's really exciting to be able to chat for 45 minutes to an hour or even over an hour sometimes to some real specialists and some key personnel in the game.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's a lot of people out there that can benefit from some of the content. Obviously, Rainsy, we've pre-recorded a couple episodes already, and when you reflect back on some of the content that we do have, it's beneficial for everyone in the footy world, whether it's an up-and-coming player that wants to end up on an AFL or an AFLW list. If you're a young coach who's looking for a way to upskill or add some theory, I guess, to your coaching. And in addition to those two, we've also got some really, really fascinating insights into the world of football. So if you're just a footy head or a parent even, and you're looking to, I guess, find out how you can support your child in their footy journey, we've definitely got some valuable learning within our episodes. And we actually heard Chris Fagan talk at the National Footy Coaching Summit about how he likes to do his learning listening to a podcast. Rainsy, do you want to talk about some of the different ways that the listeners can sort of absorb the content that we've got?
Yeah, I think, and going back to exactly what you said before, I think, there's some players, some footballers that might be, young footballers that might be out there listening, and they can really, get some insight of what to expect in the up and coming draft years, if that's what they're aspiring to do, to play AFL football. And then obviously some community coaches are out there and they want to really listen to a specific topic of the game, then we've got you covered. And I think that's really exciting. So we can cross those two generational gaps in terms of footballers, young footballers, and then obviously coaches, in the game. And I think, bringing up Fags and listening to him in National Coaching Summit recently was really interesting to see that, a great coach of his standing in the game, listens to a lot of podcasts, whether that be other sports or leadership or cultural podcasts, or things that are just informational or educational around what I suppose he wants to get out of his coaching and how he keeps improving. And I think we're always learning, and I think that's the most exciting thing about coaching itself and playing football, is that we're always learning. So to hear him to say he listens in his morning walks, he does a lot of walking and listening to podcasts, I think that's a great way to sort of listen to it. I know, being a coach myself now and a footballer, on the way to games or training and things like that, I always put a podcast on, or your relaxation time on your day off, you might be doing some chores around the house, and you can listen to these insightful sort of insightful sort of guests and specialists in certain areas. So really exciting, mate. If we get Fags on here, it'd be great. We won't give away too many surprises, but we've got some pretty good guests coming up, and who knows, we might get someone like that on the show soon.
Yeah, 100%. There's a world of coaches out there that we can learn from. And just on that as well, if you're listening to the podcast and there's a specific topic that you'd like us to cover, or if there's a particular guest that you think you'd be able to learn lots from, let us know. You can shoot us a direct message on our social media, comment on any of the posts, or just send us an email, and we'll do our best to help you out and get whoever we can on the podcast. If we
can sort of get as much feedback as possible, that's obviously always a good thing, and we can go out and try and get that topic or that skill or off-field topic that you're looking to cover in the game or listen to. We can go out and hunt down that special guest, and which is exciting, mate. Quick one, back to that. When do you listen to sort of podcasts in your spare time, mate?
Yeah, good question. I drive a lot at the moment for work, so I find driving is when I get a lot of my ideas, and it's often prompted by something like a podcast. If you've got a trip, a 45-minute trip, you can often get through a whole episode. That's 2 episodes per trip. So I think you can turn sort of junk time, I guess, into a way to actually learn and really make the most of your time. You've only got so many hours in the day. I play a bit of golf as well at the moment, Rainsy, as you know, and I'm still in the early stages. So spending a bit of time on the range, which is also another great time to whack a podcast in.
I'm not quite a multitasker. Back to you, mate, with the golfing stuff. I'm not quite a multitasker. Us males, mate, we're always been said that it's always been said that we can only do one thing at a time. I think you're a bit of a rarity when it comes to that. I think you can play a bit of golf and listen to a podcast. So
I wouldn't say well.
Well, who knows, mate? It always with the golfing game, you can always get better, and I think that's a key in what we're going to talk about. Obviously, you can always improve yourself. So Yeah, looking forward to delving into those topics, mate, and listening and giving our viewers an opportunity to listen. Now, we're going to release weekly episodes. So give us a bit of a rundown on how that sort of looks and what we've sort of got covered at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you mentioned, we're going to release weekly episodes. We've got a few in store already, and it's probably a good time, Rainsy, to introduce what episode number 1 is going to be about. Obviously, we want to get plenty of special guests on and learn from as many people as we can. But yourself being a former player, a current coach in the development space, I think there's a lot that we can learn from yourself. And so for episode number 1, the special guest is actually Andrew Rains himself. So I'll be interviewing you, Rainsy, and we've got the topic of how one-on-one football was born. So obviously a bit of an insight into the platform, what the motivation was to build something like this, how it can help the coaches we have on board, and then also as a secondary topic, obviously your expertise at the moment and the space you're working in with the Gold Coast Suns Academy, preparation for the draft, both AFL and AFLW, is an area that I think sometimes gets overlooked in the public space. You only really see the big names or the big draftees, when they join an AFL club, but there's a big bulk of work that actually goes into getting your name up in contention for a spot on a professional list. So we're going to really look into how to prepare for the AFL AFLW draft, and that's going to kick us off for episode 1.
Yeah, it's a good point you sort of raise there, mate, and looking forward to sharing that podcast and that episode with everyone to sort of kick things off. But a couple of things there, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of we probably view a lot of well-known people or people that we sort of look up to, and we see, it's like the tip of the iceberg analogy, you sort of see what's been shown and what's been done there and there type of thing, then and there, sorry. And we sometimes overlook the build-up and the years of setbacks and resilience and things like, times of adversity and getting through that and overcoming hurdles along the way and ups and downs and all that sort of thing. So I cover a fair bit of that in my podcast, but in the first episode. But a lot of our guests will share a few stories like that. So I think it's always good to get a bit of a key, I suppose, learnings out of those, the journey of those things that sort of do come up with our guests at certain points throughout the podcast. And definitely I do touch on a bit of that, but back on to sort of the one-on-one football and how that was born. I'm looking forward to sharing a fair bit of that, and hence how this has evolved into a podcast. And we do go one-on-one, and we do have obviously small groups through our coaching platform, through our private coaching services with over sort of 150 coaches now throughout Australia. We're getting bigger and better, as they say, and it's quite exciting, the journey we're sort of encroaching on, and obviously we're looking forward to sharing more of that through the podcast too. So yeah, can't wait to share it, and there's hopefully some good things that some people can get out of, especially out of episode number 1, mate.
So, Rainsy, obviously releasing weekly episodes. Did you want to talk about some of the guests that we've got planned for the next couple of months or so?
Got some pretty amazing guests, Harry. So we're looking forward to sharing this content with you. First one would probably be Mick Barlow, who's on the coaching platform, on the one-on-one coaching platform, doing some amazing things down there in Melbourne. He's a VFL coach at the moment, head coach for Werribee, and obviously played a high level AFL for about 10 years, and he's got some great insights to what his journey has been about, and now in coaching. We've got Josh Fraser. Fraser's been an incredible coach on the platform also in Melbourne, and Fraser shares a fair bit of insight about being a number 1 draft pick, so it's some really good stuff there for some of our listeners coming through the draft or a couple of years away from the draft, and the added pressure with being that number 1 pick or coming through the draft and the expectations, and obviously his coaching career, and he's going to share a bit more about what he's up to these days. Brett Delidio, one of my really good mates from Richmond. Brett will share some key skills and a pretty sublime, smooth mover he was, Brett. So he will share a fair bit of his stuff around run and carry and kicking on the run, what he's up to these days in terms of play management, also a bit of coaching. We've also got two amazing female AFLW players. A recently retired Sally Riley from the Gold Coast Suns, and also we've got Katie Brennan, the superstar player from Richmond. So there are a couple of names. Also got an AFL captain, ex-AFL captain Andrew Swallow. We'll talk a fair bit about leadership and some contested ball stuff that he's mastered over the years, and he was quite an extraordinary player at that aspect of the game. So many more to come. They're just a couple of sneak previews to who we got. Did I miss anyone there, mate?
There might be a couple, but we'll leave them.
We don't want to share too much. Exactly.
Viewers. Yeah. There's but yeah, the common theme is experts in their field, and yeah, like you mentioned, we cover a broad range of on-field and off-field topics as well. So yeah, really looking forward to sharing all that content with you guys, the viewers. And
what we're trying to really achieve here is to, you do hear some of these amazing guests come on shows or podcasts, and they'll give a bit of a life story, which is great. But we're going to really delve in and pick up some little pieces on the way about their journey and things like that, but really delve into what they've been able to be an expert or a master in their field and on a certain topic of the game, which we think is worthy of sort of delving into 45 minutes or 60 minutes of and hit them up with certain questions that the audience might want to know or around aspects of that skill or topic that they've mastered over their journey. So can't wait to share with you guys, and it's going to be amazing.
Do you have a favourite episode so far, Rainsy, that or a favourite guest that we've interviewed?
It'd be a tough one. I don't want to sort of play favourites here, mate. But I think Lids is obviously some really some amazing stuff there, and what he covered in what you spoke about. Mick Barlow, I think his journey, the amount of stats that Mick had throughout his career, I think is averaging possessions and being able to find the ball and the journey he had, missing multiple drafts, and I think that was a really impressive episode. The Josh Fraser one, just around coaching and chatting to him, just a sort of a conversational piece around coaching and craft and things like that. I think a lot of our local coaches will appreciate that. So there's a couple there, and recently doing the Katie Brennan one, I think that was really impressive just to see Katie's journey and what she shared with us and what she's done over a time in the AFLW. And not only the AFLW, again, we talk about the tip of the iceberg, what she actually did early days, playing with boys and playing in a male-dominant sport or code. It was quite impressive what she's done now to become a marquee player on and off the field as a AFLW superstar.
Absolutely. So in terms of the format of the podcast, we're recording this in both audio and video as well. So if you're listening on Spotify, you'll be able to subscribe now and keep updated on when we release episodes, but also on YouTube. So we're going to have video recordings for every episode as well. So yeah, whichever platform you end up listening on, feel free to subscribe. And we'd appreciate you sort of sharing the podcast and if you think there's anyone else that might benefit from the information, please get them on board as well. So that's about all we've got time for episode 0, Rainsy. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll catch you next week for episode number 1 with Andrew Rains.
See you then, guys.
Thanks for listening to the One-on-One Football Podcast. If you got something out of today's episode, we'd love for you to leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to stay updated on future episodes, special guests, and more, feel free to subscribe to the show on your chosen platform. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. One-on-One Football, connecting footballers with private AFL accredited coaches Australia-wide. Register now at oneonfootball.com.au.